Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So I have been flying these quite a bit. These are the 4-inch long-range quads that have been just flooding the market lately. And a question I keep getting asked by a lot of you folks out there is it worth the price and the weight to use a 4S 18650 lithium-ion pack on these guys as opposed to a traditional, maybe like 650 milliamp 4S lithium polymer battery? Well, and the other question I get asked is, how do I make one? Because I don't want to spend $40 on a battery pack that's maybe not worth it. There's a lot that goes into making a battery pack, and I've made quite a few of them in my days. Probably the scariest one I built was a 12S 2 parallel 18650 pack. That one had a few scary moments building that one, but they're not hard to build. There's just a lot that has to go into the process of building them. So for the people who just don't want to mess with possibly burning something up, catching a battery on fire, doing things that don't feel natural, if you're asking the question, how does a lithium-ion battery work, this might not be for you. If any of these things ring true, then head over to the video description. There's a link to some really good 4S lithium-ion packs. Go ahead and pick one of those up. It's $40. It's probably gonna be worth it in the long run for you. All right, thanks a lot. Have a nice day, and I will see you next time. All right, cool. Now that those guys are gone, you and me are a lot alike. We like to build shit, and we're gonna build a battery pack. Yes, it's probably gonna cost more than going out and buying one, but you built it, or I built it, or we built it, whatever. So we're gonna go ahead and build a 4S lithium-ion battery pack. So here is some of the stuff that you're probably gonna wanna have. Remember, we need this to be light, so that means we're gonna maybe skimp on safety a little bit, but not a whole lot. Just hear me out on this one. All right, here's some of the stuff we're gonna need. First things first, we're gonna need some of these things. These are this is called fish paper. These are little tiny rings that they're self-adhesive and they stick to the top of your lithium-ion cell. Now this is All right, test number one. Give the old smell test. This one's leaking. That's not a good sign. All right. Okay, so we'll oh man. All right, we'll put that guy aside. There might be something wrong with her. Yeah. Anyways, so these little fish paper rings, they go on the top of the cell, like so, and they protect the battery cell because this entire casing all the way around is the negative side of the cell. The only positive side is this little piece right here. So if you had something that scraped through right here, you will eventually basically short the cell out. So these little fish paper rings are just for abrasion resistance. This is about the maximum, well, I'm not gonna say the maximum extent of safety we're gonna go through, but it is definitely one of the big safety features that we are going to employ in this build. Next thing we're gonna need a 4S balance lead. 4S balance lead, you know how you can tell? It's got 5 holes in it. One positive for each cell, and then the ground. So we're gonna need one of these guys. By the way, a link to all this stuff is gonna be found in the video description below. Yeah, they're gonna be affiliate links, and that stuff helps me out a ton. Also down there, if you want to check out everything that's going on with me, check out tweetafee.com. You'll find links to my YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. Big ups for the Patreon people. I really thank you folks. All right. Another thing we're gonna need a XT30. This is just a hodgepodge of XT30 connectors. We're gonna need some wire. This is 18 gauge. This is probably overkill, but it's what I have laying around. Some Kapton tape. Kapton tape is pretty special stuff. It's really thin, light, sticky, and it doesn't burn. It'll char, but it won't actually ignite under normal circumstances. And we're gonna need some nickel strips. These are pure nickel. Make sure you specifically get pure nickel, and these are 2mm thick nickel strips. You can get this in a roll or you can get them in strips. Either way, got to get some of that. And a trusty multimeter. And then if we're gonna do things the wrongish right way, you're gonna need to have a soldering iron, some solder, flux, and I like to use this stuff. It's like a bonding braid when making soldered together 18650 packs. This is how we do it the wrong way. So I'll talk about this, but probably not going to do it that way. And if you want to do it the right way, you need a spot welder. These can be made for nothing more than a couple electrodes, a cheapo 12-volt solenoid, and your car battery. Or you can do something like this. This is a K-weld. This is a very high-end spot welder specifically for making battery packs like this. You don't need this. I just happen to have this for some of the other packs that I've built in the past. If you're going to be doing this a lot, there are other spot welders that are very affordable, that aren't quite as good as the K-weld, but they definitely get the job done. I'll put, obviously, links to all that stuff down there. Okay, so the other big thing that we have to figure out is what cells are we going to put in this thing? There are a lot of different 18650 cells out there. They all have different characteristics. Typically, the higher the discharge amp rating, the lower the capacity. So we need to find a happy medium between discharge and capacity. As one goes up, the other goes down. This is not always the case, but for the most part, it is. Also, typically the higher the amp discharge, the higher the price. So we've got this three-tiered model of trying to figure out what we're gonna buy. Here I put together a list of some cells and prices. I didn't really try to go out and bargain hunt. This is just kind of what I found. The old standard lithium-ion battery was the Samsung 30Qs. These are pretty darn good cells, and they're probably the best match between capacity, discharge, and cost. So if we go up in discharge ratings, 35 amps is the maximum we have here, and these are the Molicel 26As. They're about $5 a piece, but they're only 2600 milliamps. Conversely, if we go the highest capacity, 3350, but we're only going to get 7 amps of discharge, and that's probably not going to cut it for us. So based on, well, I guess the other factor to consider is the price. These VTC6s are probably the best battery out there. 3 amps, 30C discharge, but they're $9 a pop. That's getting into buying it yourself, or just going on buying it range. So we need to kind of find a happy medium. What do you want? Do you want maximum flight time? Do you want maximum performance? Do you want low cost? Or do you just want a kind of flat, in the middle, kind of whatever you can get? In my opinion, probably the best kind of do it all for a decent price is probably these Molicel 26As. They're only 2600 milliamps with 35 amp discharge, which is pretty darn good. We're going to get some decent flight performance on it. Only $5 a piece. And probably the other one would be these Sony Murat VTC6s, but they're way too expensive. So I think the Molicel 26As are going to be our cell of choice. I happen to have a couple of them sitting here. These are some leftovers from when I built my homemade one wheel. These little guys here, great little cells. I also do have some VTC4s as well, but I think I'm going to save these for something else. So I'm going to go with the Molicel P26A. If you have a bunch of cells laying around, you want to make sure they're all the same kind, same capacity. You want to make sure they're the same quality as well. You can purchase an analyzer which will charge, discharge, then recharge, and give you a capacity and an internal resistance. I have done that with all of these cells. Do you need to do it? Probably not. it's a good idea to measure the voltage of all your cells, make sure they're kind of at least somewhat close. Also, if you have cells and you want to know which cells they are on the face of them, you typically have the manufacturer and the model number printed right on the jacketing. So we're going to go ahead and use these also because I have 4 of these and one of them is also leaking the lifeblood out of it, and it smells, what's that smell like? It smells like nail polish remover, grape, and cancer. I think that's basically what that smells like. At least that's what it smells like to me. Let's go ahead and clear the bench. All right, so at the very minimum, you're gonna wanna go through and just at least check to make sure that they're somewhat the same voltage. Preferably a lower state of charge, so about 3.8 volts would be great. We want them all to be kind of the same. So that one's full, and this one is full as well. But like I said, we're not gonna use these. I don't know why I'm showing this. Sorry, I'm wasting your time. All right, anyways, we're gonna go back to these guys. Let's go ahead and just do a quick checkaroonie. 3.85, 3.83, 3.84, and 3.85. Okay, so we're good with that. These are all pretty much the same voltage. Now we gotta talk about how we're gonna lay out the cell. We're gonna think of this battery pack like this. So we have 4 cells, 4 1S cells in. So here we have the positive. This is gonna be our main discharge lead. From this positive, we're going to join this negative and this positive. We're gonna go out of this one, from this negative to this positive, out of this negative, and into this positive. And then from here is gonna be our main discharge negative. So that is the basic layout. So each time we connect a positive to a negative, we are basically adding a cell to the pack voltage. So 4.2 plus 4.2 plus 4.2 plus 4.2 is a 4S pack. Conversely, if we were to connect them all kind of like this, where it was all the positives, all the negatives, that would just be a, okay Google, what's 2600 times 4?
2,600 times 4 is 10,400.
That big of a 1S pack. So that's how we're going to want this. Now we have our main discharge leads out of here. We also need to think about our balancing leads because we need the balancing leads to make this battery safe when we go to recharge it. Balancing leads do absolutely nothing for you during discharge, only recharge. So we're going to need one of these wires on each of the series, not parallel, jeez. We're going to need one of these on each group. So we have our main full pack voltage, power and ground here. Pretty simple. We're also going to need cell 1, so we'll just join it up with this side, cell pack 2, and cell pack 3. So this is going to go on the main discharge here. This one I'm going to join up on this strip here. This one I'm going to join to this strip. This one will go to this strip, and this one will go to the main ground. Pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. So we also need to think about our orientation. We're going to go with the typical pack layout, like so. One thing I forgot to say that you could use, or that you will probably want, is a hot glue gun. All right, so I'm gonna get my hot glue gun, heat it up, and stick these suckers together. All right, glue gun's chooching pretty good. Let's go ahead and stick them together. All right, there we go. We have our bundle of fiery failure ready to go. Now we have to start attaching stuff. So here's where we can separate the right from the wrong. One way we can do this is we can solder the cells together. I like to use this solder braid on much higher discharge packs. This will actually work really well on this, but you could also just use regular, like 18 gauge wire if you wanted to. Soldering to 18650 cells is not a good idea. Getting these hot is the enemy of the battery packs. Don't solder these. Don't solder. Don't solder. Hey, you. Don't solder these. All right, I'm gonna show you how to solder these things. So if you want to solder these, what you got to do is you got to have a soldering iron that is super stinking hot. You got to get the iron unbelievably hot. Get a piece of wire. I could be better prepared for this, couldn't I? Why start now? All right? Just kind of doing this off the cuff. Oh. Almost forgot our fish paper rings because let's start being safe now. One. There's two. Three. Four. All right. So there's our pack. I'm not going to solder that one. I'll solder these two just because I'm going to show you guys how to weld this pack. If we're going to solder to two, here's how we're going to do it. Don't worry, I'm taking you along with me. All the failures and all the problems. Trick is take your cell, kind of scratch away at the bottom there. A little bit of flux. This is liquid flux. Pretty good stuff. Get your iron up to whatever the maximum hotness you can get it. And just let her have it. Feed a bunch of solder in. Yeah, it's not sticking to the base material yet. You'll see when it does. It'll start to kind of puddle on the cell itself. There you go. You don't want to get it much hotter than that, and you want to cool this as quickly as you can. Typically, just a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. That'll help cool it off. Remember, folks, heat is the enemy. This is just a little pump bottle of isopropyl alcohol. You want high heat, low dwell time. The higher the heat, the faster it'll take material without heating up the rest of the cell. If you go with a lower temperature soldering iron, the heat will end up soaking into the cell before the base material gets hot enough to take solder. Hotter and quicker. That's the way you want to go with it. This is how you want to go with almost all of these electronics. If you're lifting pads, it's because you're on there for far too long. Bump the heat up. You got to move quick. You got to have all your stuff ready and you got to go. In, on, out, done. Don't sit there. If you're sitting there for way too long, this cell is going to get far too hot and you're going to damage it. Or at the very worst, it could actually rupture on you. You don't want that. All right. So we've got some solder on there. Do the same thing to the other side, and then all you got to do is bridge to two with a piece of wire, just like you normally would solder up just about anything else, just like that. Pretty simple. Okay. All right. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to weld it, and I'm going to show you that process now. Probably don't need to say what I'm going to do. Probably just go and do it. You complete buffoon. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of these nickel strips, and we need to trim these down so we don't need a ton of overhang. Just like so, and you're going to want to round the corners. We want to remove whatever sharp edges we can. I've seen people use like toenail clippers for this. It seems to work out pretty good. So we're gonna join these two, like so. Get the OK weld. And I'm powering it off of a 4S 5 amp battery that I use for my X-Class drone. Seems to work good enough. And this is just foot pedal controlled. And contact. Doing about 10 joules. And two tacks is all you really need. Watch those battery cables. That's not me jumping them. That's them jumping. That's a lot of energy going through there. All right. So that is one pack connected. We can do whatever we want at this point. So we're gonna go positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. So we're gonna go and join these two here. There we go. So positive, negative. It's also a good idea. You can always just use the old Sharpie method. So we're gonna go positive, negative, positive. It's a pretty basic pack. It's pretty easy to track. But as you start getting into much larger packs, you may need some extra help. So trim another strip here. Now at this point you want to be really careful, because if this strip slips off and touches this side, it could short out and cause some fire. So we want to be very careful that we retain one side of the strip while we spot weld this side. There we go. And the K-weld's really nice. If you have a bad weld, it'll give you that tone and tell you that something didn't happen right. And there is our final. So again, we don't ever want to solder on this. So what we can do is we can take our nickel strips and we can make solder pads with them. So this is going to have our wire soldered to it. And we can do the same for this side. There we go. And we can put the K-weld away. All right, so that's the easy part done. We have now a 4S lithium-ion pack. Essentially, this is it. We can hook a positive and negative lead up to this and we can run this sucker all day long. Can we charge it like that? Yeah, you probably could. Is it a good idea? No, not at all. We have to put the balance lead on this thing to make it safe to recharge. To discharge, this thing is perfectly safe as is. Yeah, you'd probably want to wrap some stuff on it, but you know, you don't need to. But we're gonna want to. So we can verify our work real quick. Hook up the old Pixie detector. And we should have 4S pack voltage here at these two ends here. 15.38 volts. Yep, that's about right. And you can see how the flow of electrons work. So that's one cell, two cells, three cells, and again, that's all four right there. So we know we did something right, up to this point at least. Put this aside. All right, now we need to clean this up a little bit. These little clip ends, these things are like razor sharp. And I've had these pierce the jacketing on a pack before, as they stick to your fingers. I've had these stick into the jacketing because they are extremely sharp. I don't want to wrangle these things, collect all our FOD, and chuck that in the trash can. Okay, so now we have to think about how we're going to lay this pack out as far as our discharge and charging leads go. Do we want like a stupid short lead? Do we want like a normal size lead? It's kind of got to think about how you want to lay this out. I think I'm going to do a lead about long, nothing crazy. So I already have this one made up. You could use one off of a dead lipo. There's a lot of different options out there for you. You can buy individual XT30s. You can do XT60 if you want. Everything I would fly this with uses XT30, so we're gonna roll with an XT30. Like I said, this one's already soldered up. You do want to double check these that are already pre-soldered to make sure that the red and black correspond to where they're supposed to go. I've known people that have bought pre-soldered leads where the black was going to positive and the red was going to negative, and they fried some very important electronics. So pretty simple, 850 dungarees. Tin this bad boy up. There we go. And we're going to want to tin our pads here. So we got to think about how this is going to work out. You know, which end's the monkey going to be pulling on. Yeah. We'll just do it. These nickel pads take solder very, very easily. There we go. And it's probably a better idea to solder these before you weld them on, but this is definitely better than soldering directly to the cell itself. Like I said, we're not going to go overboard with safety here. Safety typically equates to more weight. We're already going to be at a deficit for weight based on the fact that this pack is much heavier than a typical lithium polymer battery. Shrink them and ink those on there. Oop, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. All right. Now we got to start working our balance lead. I'm going to make the balance lead about as long as the discharge lead, just because it's going to be a lot easier once we go to start charging this pack up if we do that. So the red one goes to your main discharge lead. And the last wire in this this JST connector, that goes to the ground side. By the way, I've been using this Ethics portable toolkit a lot lately, and I really like it. It seems to have just about everything you need, minus a soldering iron and a pair of tweezers, but it definitely has space to store those two things. All right, nothing left but to hook up the rest of these. So this I'm going to run over to, and I'm just going to solder it right in between those two. No, it's not my design. No, I'm not going to give you the STL. Yes, it's on Thingiverse. It's called Yet Another Vice. It's the number one that'll come up. There's one. So that is picking up the voltage between cell 1. So now we got to get the voltage from cell 2. Pretty simple. We're just going to take the next wire on the connector. I'll just run it to the bridge between cells 2 and 3. First one is between cell 1. The next one is going to be cell 2. This one is going to be cell 3. Run this down the center again, like before. Now, these are non-ferrous, so I don't have to worry about bridging contacts, but this part isn't, so you need to be careful I don't, do one of those things. And that's it. we have a completely soldered up 18650 4S lithium-ion pack. Check with the old Selma checker. 3.845-ish per cell. 15.34 on the main discharge lead. It's always a little bit different, at least with that checker. So there we go. So that's it. This thing is actually ready to go. It is safe to charge, safe to discharge, except for we have a lot of exposed contacts and things that we need to kind of secure to make this a little bit on the safer side. Mostly it's going to be done with heat shrink and capped on tape. So we're done with the soldering iron. We can kind of put all that stuff away. So that's the hard part. She's done as far as we're concerned. Next, we need to just kind of secure everything down. We need to find a safe way to manage this pack. And the best way that I can think of is with tape and heat shrink. I'm going to put a wrap around. No. There we go. This is all you need. This is good to go, and you can go fly this. I do want to put heat shrink on it just because I want to be fancy like that. I do have a roll of this super classy red heat shrink. Wow, that looks pink in this camera. Oh. Orange, pink, red. Oh, looks red to me. So, just gonna go ahead and slice this off a hunk. Hope I bought the right size. I probably didn't. This does tend to be frustrating for a guy.
One eternity later.
All right, so this is clearly not the right size heat shrink. Damn. All right, 65 millimeter heat shrink, not big enough. I'll definitely put a link to something that's more appropriately sized, but there we go. That's it. She's ready to rock. We just got to charge it up. Definitely stand by for that first charge. Make sure nothing goes nuts. If you didn't check to make sure all the cells were at least had roughly the same internal resistance and capacity, this might be where things get a little sketchy. All right, gonna go charge the sucker up.
A few moments later.
All right, folks, so there you have it. That's how you build a 4S 18650 pack to the flavor and the specs that you wanted. Just for a weight comparison, my little 18650 pack that is 2600 milliamps is about 195 grams. Compare that to like a 650 pack. This is 82 grams, so it is significantly heavier, but it sure is way more energy dense. Now, when you're running an 18650 pack, you need to change some settings in Betaflight. You don't need to, but you probably should. The minimum cell voltage for an 18650 cell is roughly 2.5 volts per cell, but it does depend on the manufacturer. So each type of cell has a data sheet that specifies basically where the safe ending voltage is. So 2.5 volts, and that's about when you should land. So that is a mite bit more than our ending voltage of roughly, I don't know, I usually don't go past like 3.4 volts per cell on a lithium-ion. I'm not really sure if that's good or not, but that's just what I do. And my packs seem to last quite a long time. Also, the starting charge voltage. Just charge it up like a lithium-ion pack, 4.2 volts. But then again, remember, each cell has its own specifications from the manufacturer. So you're definitely going to want to reference that data sheet if you are building your own pack. Now, if this seems like way too much work and it's way too daunting, too much overhead for you to make your own pack, then, well, go ahead, head over to like Race Day Quads or someplace like that and go ahead and pick one up for 40 bucks. If that seems too much, or you just like the idea of making your own, because that's how this hobby works. We make our own stuff, we fix our own stuff, and maybe you learn something along the way, give it a shot. If you can solder them, don't recommend it. It's definitely doable. I've done it plenty plenty of times. Welding is the preferred way to do it. Heck, even I have seen 18650 packs with tabs pre-welded onto them that then you could solder to each other. Just a thought. All right, folks, I really hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about this, or if you saw anything I did wrong, I'm sure there's plenty of things I did wrong. You would want to put fish paper between the cells and all that stuff. But again, going for lightweight, as light as we can. Anyways, if you like this, please consider going to tweetfb.com, subscribe, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, become a patron if you really want to support me. I do a lot of stuff over there on Patreon, and they typically get early release videos to things like this and certain giveaways. All right, folks, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out, and stay safe, keep making, and have fun.